Mark Twain once said, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes." Very prophetic considering this was way before the internet. So what common sense is actually wrong? Story 1. Good place to spend an hour learning about all the things you thought were true but aren't. It is rarely necessary to wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. Despite being referenced commonly in culture and society at large, the idea that Victorian-era doctors invented the vibrator to cure female hysteria via triggering orgasm is a product of a single work rejected by most historians. When a meteor or spacecraft enters the atmosphere, the heat of entry is not primarily caused by friction, but by adiabatic compression of air in front of the object. There is no such thing as an alpha in a wolf pack. An early study that coined the term alpha wolf had only observed unrelated adult wolves living in captivity. In the wild, wolf packs operate more like human families. There's no defined sense of rank. Parents are in charge until the young grow up and start their own families. Younger wolves do not overthrow an alpha to become the new leader, and social dominance fights are situational. Drowning is often inconspicuous to onlookers. In most cases, raising the arms and vocalizing are impossible due to the instinctive drowning response. Exercise-induced muscle soreness is not caused by lactic acid buildup. Water-induced wrinkles are not caused by the skin absorbing water and swelling. They're caused by the autonomic nervous system, which triggers localized vasoconstriction in response to wet skin, yielding a wrinkled appearance. Alcohol does not necessarily kill brain cells. Alcohol can, however, lead indirectly to the death of brain cells in two ways. 1. In chronic heavy alcohol users whose brains have adapted to the effects of alcohol, abrupt cessation following heavy use can cause excitotoxicity, leading to cellular death in multiple areas of the brain. 2. In alcoholics who get most of their daily calories from alcohol, a deficiency of thiamine can produce Korsakoff syndrome, which is associated with serious brain damage. Isn't exercise-induced muscle soreness just tearing of the fibers? The drowning one is a very important one. I almost drowned in a pool when I was like 5 or so. I made a step from the shallow end to the deep end, and suddenly it was too difficult for me to keep my head above water. You know when I realized when I was drowning? When I was 19 or something like that, the first time I actually read a drowning description warning of those signs, and I was like, wait a minute. And it isn't like I wasn't conscious or too young. I can remember that moment clearly, and I remember my thought process as well. I never felt like I was drowning. I felt like I screwed up and I just needed to take a step back to the shallow end, either by moving my feet to the floor or grabbing the floating line that separates the shallow and deep end of the pool and pulling myself back. At the same time, I didn't float. My head kept bouncing underwater, so more frantic movement to keep my head above water. But I did manage that, so I wasn't drowning. I was keeping my head out of the water usually, but I didn't have enough movement to do something about moving back to the shallow end without losing momentum and keeping my head above water. I could do one or the other, but not both. But I wasn't drowning. I was just still busy unmessing myself messed up. So yeah, I can definitely understand those weird and ironic stories of how a pool celebrates a year of no drownings, and someone then drowns at the party filled with lifesavers. If you drown, you're not busy making big movements to warn others of your peril. Most likely, you don't even think you're drowning, and you need all your strength and momentum to keep your head above the water, which are small and irregular movements. If the head is bobbing, that is a bad sign. I went through that intro so many times, doing take after take, because a lot of those words really caught me off guard. I'm really glad I finally got through that. So, story 2. That people are good eyewitnesses. We aren't. Our perception of things sucks. We are prone to so many biases that we aren't even aware of. If I grade a paper on an empty stomach, I'll grade them lower than if I'm not hungry. And I will never admit that to be true, even though it is. I was told this story by my forensics teacher a few years ago. It's been some time since I heard it, so some details are fuzzy. My forensics teacher was going out with friends one day. After a day at the mall, their car was only one of a few in the parking lot. It was late-ish at night, so they all hurried to the car. As they were about to drive away, a drunk guy came up to the car and pulled a gun on them. Keep in mind that they all saw the dude's face. They got away fine and reported the incident to the police. When asked to describe the perpetrator, all three of them gave a different description, despite the fact that they all saw the same guy at the same time from relatively the same angle. Human brains are weird. Now think about how many people are behind bars based only on eyewitness testimony. I once ran across the street to help a woman who was lying on the ground. She got up and ran away after being assaulted, and a few minutes later, police showed up, and I told them which way she went. They asked me for a description. A few minutes later, I passed her again while walking up the block. The only thing I got right was her hair color and that she was wearing a dark shade. I thought she was wearing a winter jacket, but she really just had a hoodie on. Thought she was wearing jeans and winter boots, but it was black leggings and sneakers. I was kneeling beside her and had my hand on her back before she ran off, and I still couldn't accurately tell what she was wearing. I think that one's very true. That reminds me of the scenes in the movie My Cousin Vinny, where the lawyer just completely decimates everybody's eyewitness accounts. I mean, it's true that the person there was not wearing glasses when they were supposed to, and the one about the grits and the time it took to view what was happening was very interesting. But yeah, I think that's a very interesting one as well. We are very biases in what we see. Story 3. In medical school, we're taught that common things are common, and that when you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras, meaning that we should always assume the most obvious diagnosis. Medical students almost always jump to the rarest disease when taking multiple choice tests or when they first go into clinical rotations and see real patients. Yes, and it's not just medicine. How much of IT is eliminated with, "Have you tried turning it off and on again? Is everything plugged in?" But sadly, this does mean that when you've got a truly complicated problem, you have to slog through the simple solutions talk. It's always DNS. Even when it isn't, it is. And the most important lesson? It's never lupus. Until it is. Unless your name is House. I once presented with knee pain. Because I mentioned I had probably done it weightlifting, the docs panicked, told me to never lift again, had me keep my weight off it, and walk with a cane for months while awaiting an MRI for a suspected crushed or split meniscus. I got through all those previous ones, all those words in the first story, only to be tripped up by meniscus. Had I gone to a sports physio, it's likely I'd have been told it was a mild inflammation from valgus collapse and to improve my form. Fair play, they did their best, but they saw zebra. Ditto when I got my blood tested and my estrogen was so low they suspected early menopause. Got to hospital, consultant redid the bloods and showed me they were fine. Estrogen fluctuates a lot, and it's been worried over nothing. It's not just about seeing zebra. If there's something in the river that's either a log or a gator, then it's prudent to err on the side of the dangerous and not go swimming. I can also agree on the IT side of it. It just reminds me of the show The IT Crowd. "Hello, IT, have you tried turning it off and on again?" It's usually that. When I have a problem with my computer, A lot of times I just need to restart it because I haven't started it up again in a while. Story 4. If you're in a relationship but develop feelings for someone else, break up with them, because if you truly love them, you wouldn't love the second person. Hogwash. Don't cheat. Don't have an emotional affair, but figure out what's going on in your heart and your head before throwing away a loving relationship over a crush. One size does not fit all. This is often said by people obsessed with the idea that everyone has the one. No one has just one person just made for them. You can love lots of people. You can get along with lots of people. You might love multiple people at once or no one at all. All these are perfectly acceptable and normal. The only thing not normal and acceptable is hurting people you love because you can't keep it in your pants if you and your partner want that. I've been struggling with this for a while now. My one passed away 6 months ago. One of the things she told me before it happened, she was terminally ill, so it didn't come out of nowhere, was that she wanted me to love again. And I can't help but think, what if I still love her more than the next person? It feels like a betrayal to her, and like it isn't fair to whoever comes next. I don't know, the few people I have said this to dismissively say, it's not time for thinking that, or you know she would want you to be happy, or something similar. Sorry to just drop that on you. Story 5. When I worked in spectator event safety, we learned, sports stadia, that when an evacuation is happening, the safest place to go is the playing field, as it's usually open air and therefore low risk if it's a fire evacuation. However, common sense takes over crowd dynamics, and people try leaving the way they came in, from the other side of the building. So this common sense trait results in thousands of people flocking into burning buildings. An example of this was the Bradford City Stadium fire. A huge chunk of the crowd headed back into the burning stadium looking for exits, despite open air, the pitch being meters in front of them. Sometimes, planning and training can count against you. Look at the Piper Alpha disaster in the North Sea. They were trained to muster in the fireproof accommodation block and await rescue. The only people that survived broke training and jumped over the side. Grenfell Tower Fire, UK. Any residents of the tower who called the fire service were told to remain in their flat unless it was affected, which is the standard policy for a fire in a high-rise building, as each flat should be fireproofed from its neighbors. Wikipedia. Many survivors told how they ignored this advice. 72 people perished from that fire. Who knows how many would have escaped had that advice not delayed them while the fire spread. Story 6. If you are stern with the person, retail worker, food worker, whatever, you'll get what you want. We're more likely to bend over backwards to help you out if you're polite and kind, and not real likely to do it if you come in assuming your time is more important than ours, or that the world revolves around you. Tagging into that, I work in a call center. You're welcome to call in your complaints. That's why I have a job. For reality's sake, though, call me after you're finished being actively angry about it. It's so much easier for me to help you when I don't have to manage both your anger and your conversation. I work in retail and have so many people who literally just walk in, make a beeline for the registers and ask the cashier, "Do you have any coupons for me?" Or when something doesn't quite go the way they wanted and they demand something for free for their trouble, we always say no to those people, and usually save the coupons for those who are here out of inconvenience. Example, exchanging a defective item, waiting for their computer to be repaired, but also if they didn't ask for it. I tend to find the coupon/freebie is appreciated much more by those who weren't expecting it. Yes, this should be called the Karen principle. If anything, I think all the years of the pandemic and afterwards should have taught us that this does not work. The fact that we're likely to bend over backwards to help you out if you're polite and kind, that should be the common sense now. We've got plenty of YouTube videos of compilations of people that prove being stern with a person does not work at all. Story 7. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. Psychologists actually showed that it's the reverse, which is why long-distance relationships are very hard. Out of sight, out of mind is more accurate. I think this is an accurate observation in short term for someone that you see so often that if you're apart for a few days, then you actually miss them because they're part of your routine. Think parents who read you a story every night but have to travel for a day or two for work or a family emergency, or friends at school you talk to on the daily about everything and then fall in sick, or a significant other you have dinner with every night who goes on a business trip for a week. Technically, you miss the interaction until a new routine settles in. Distance makes the heart grow fonder? It absolutely does when talking about people that you don't like. Awful people are far more tolerable when they're over 100 miles away 99% of the time. Original source, Roger de Raberton. I'll refer to this post by Herndon17. Absence is to love what wind is to fire. It extinguishes the small and kindles the great. Story 8. Opposites attract in regards to relationships. Most of the time, they do not. Pretty sure that's misinterpreted. Opposite personalities attract. Opposite values and interests do not. Look at a couple that's made it a long time. Normally, one of them is much more outgoing than the other. People who have nothing in common tend to break up. Hey, thanks for the silver. This is correct. You should find someone that shares common values, goals, and beliefs, but who can complement you by filling in the gaps where you're weak or help balance you out. Totally this. My wife is an extreme introvert, and I'm extremely extroverted. We work well together because she knows when to tell me to calm down, and I can help her at times when she doesn't want to work up the courage for something. She's the perfect complement to my personality. However, we have the same core values and belief systems. We like the same type of music, movies, and general entertainment. So as you said, opposite personalities, not necessarily total opposites. Story 9. Probably not the answer you're looking for, but the notion that darker roasts of coffee are higher in caffeine content. They're not. The caffeine gets cooked out the longer you roast the coffee bean. The lighter the roast, the higher the caffeine content. Ugh. When I worked at the gas station, this guy is like, "Which coffee is the strongest?" And I said, "In flavor or caffeine content?" He said, "Both." And I told him to do our medium roast, and he said, "No, I want the dark roast." And years later, I'm still bothered because he thinks he's right. He's off somewhere in rural Minnesota thinking he's hyped the hell up on his sludge coffee, and I hate it. Why would he ask, though, if you're just going to ignore the advice anyway? What? Curse me, this is the news I've needed. I learned this on day 1 at my last barista job and was floored. Instantly told all of my friends because the world needs to know. I think a bunch of coffee people play into the wrong version of this. Usually with a darker roast, they have those little sets of icons and they've got more dots for caffeine content for the darker roast next to the lighter one. Looks like I gotta buy a whole bunch of new pods for my Keurig machine now. Story 10. Just because you're not fat doesn't mean you're in good shape. I've been vegetarian for 15 years. Everyone thinks this means I eat healthy. I don't. My diet is mostly pizza and pasta and whatever microwaves faster than it takes for me to eat it afterwards. My best friend is vegan. My best friend is also a big curvy woman. My best friend cannot roll her eyes hard enough when she hears people ignorantly proclaim that fat vegans don't exist because vegan equals healthy equals thin. I can give you a list of candy and junk food that's vegan. Vegan does not necessarily mean healthy. Vegan just means there's no animal byproducts or ingredients used to make the food. I'm an underweight potato and I feel personally attacked. As a skinny person with a diet consisting almost entirely of cheese and caffeine, I felt it too. You're completely right. Source? My 125-pound butt that will probably have a heart attack at 25 for eating so bad. Story 11. When you see an emergency vehicle with sirens on behind you, you should always slow down and move to the lane or shoulder to your right. This is exactly what you should do on city roads, but on the highway, you should never brake for an emergency vehicle unless they're pulling you over or you're slowing for a stop vehicle. Braking in front of an ambulance just slows them down and creates traffic jams. Maintain your speed and get your signal on and merge as soon as you can. And for deity's sake, stop slamming on your brakes to avoid a speeding ticket when you see a cop. Just take your lead foot off the gas and slow naturally. Driving with y'all is scary. If you know you're speeding when you see a cop, braking can tip them off because they see both your nosedive and your brake lights.
Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 12. You don't need to wait 30 minutes before going swimming after eating. This was just invented by public pools to stop people bringing food into the water, or by parents wanting to take a nap after lunch before having to keep an eye on their children again. My grandpa told a lie when I visited him and my grandma in Florida. He said that the Florida law was that you had to wait 3 hours before getting in the pool after eating instead of the 30 minutes back home. He wanted a nap in the middle of the day. The origin that makes the most sense to me is that people don't want kids full of food to jump in the pool and vomit. I like to wait anyway. Getting acid reflux while swimming sucks. Same with irritable bowel syndrome and spicy food. I remember when the news came out that this whole waiting 30 minutes was bunk. I felt so betrayed. They always told us that you'll get a cramp if you go in before that. And maybe I didn't know everything about the human body, and I still don't, but I just couldn't make the connection between eating and getting exposed to water to get a cramp. Just didn't make sense. Story 13. Tilt your head back during a bloody nose. I get bloody noses all the time, always have, and the amount of times I'm just sitting there minding my own business with a tissue to my nose, and somebody, usually older adults, walk by and tell me I should tilt my head back. No thank you, I don't want to flood my throat with nose blood, ma'am. Just ask them why and see if they can explain. Oh my goodness, this. I had it at the dentist once while getting an impression done, and they laid me back in the chair before I could realize what was happening. I was like, what? No, you should know better. I'm unaware of the reason why you shouldn't. Story 14. You hold your breath if you run out of air while scuba diving. Wrong. Your lungs will explode as you float upwards with a lung full of air, and you probably will try to surface anyway, and the air inside them expands. The proper procedure is to scream all the way up to make sure your airways are open. Except you forgot about Scuba Diving 101. Don't frackin' dive alone. My regulator busted underwater once. I signaled my partner the out of air sign. He gave me a second regulator and we went up. That was as easy as when we did the exercises. Just like the simulations. Story 15. Astronomer here. In honor of the equinox today, the seasons are not caused because of our distance from the sun. In fact, we're slightly closer to the sun during northern hemisphere winter over summer. Instead, it's caused by the fact that the Earth is tilted on its axis, and we get more direct sunlight in summer over winter, aka like how the sun sets earlier in winter over summer. There's actually a depressing video where some reporters went to graduation at Harvard and asked people what caused seasons. Most people didn't know, citing the closer to the sun thing. That sounds like a very hilarious but kind of depressing type of prank video. Going up to people who are just graduating, wearing their cap and gown, and quizzing them on different subjects that they should know about. I'll have to look that up. I'm surprised we haven't seen more of that kind of video format. Story 16. The harder you brush, the cleaner your teeth get. All you're gonna do is cause gum recession. I was 14 before my dentist told me to take it easy brushing my teeth. I thought it was normal having to replace a brush once a month. The recommended time is 3 months, but not because you're gonna wear it out. Just because that stuff's nasty. A little rinse isn't gonna clean that toothbrush out after you use it. You'll scrub away your tooth enamel as well. Once that's gone, you're cursed. Was born without enamel in my teeth. Can verify, it sucks. Story 17. You should spend 2 months' wages on an engagement ring is a marketing slogan. I heard an ad on the radio today. Some jewelry shop was offering 5-year payment plans for engagement rings. What a great way to start your marriage. 5 years of extra payments. I wonder how many people have 3 years of payments left after their divorce. Fracking hell, that sounds horrendous. They say 3 years' salary, Michael Scott. Wow, maybe that's why he had to declare bankruptcy. I'm pretty sure expensive engagement rings are dying out, and for good reason. Story 18. Common sense says sun isn't out and it's cool outside. You don't have to worry about sunburns. Worst sunburn I ever got. I remember reading that 80% of the sun's harmful rays escape through the cloud layer. Source: a poster in my dermatologist's office. When there's snow on the ground, you can actually get sunburnt worse due to the reflection of the rays from the snow. Same type of concept with swimming as well. Skiers need to wear UV glasses to avoid getting snow blindness, caused by the high amounts of reflected light from snow. I can confirm this one. I'm from California, and for a while I either came back from the beach even when it was cloudy, snow white, or lobster red. Really started to learn to love sunscreen. Story 19. A harsher punishment doesn't deter someone from committing a negative act. Common sense would tell you that if a substance dealer is aware of a law that would sentence them to life in prison for dealing substances, that they'll be less likely to deal substances. However, research shows that people often don't consider the negative consequences prior to breaking the law. Research shows that it isn't the harshness of the punishment, but the certainty of it that deters crime. Story 20. Also, life is easier when you're young. Youth is the best years of your life. Growing up, everyone always said, "This is the best time of your life. Enjoy it while you can." They were super wrong. I hated school, hated being a student, and hated the lack of freedom. I work 50-ish, it varies, 40 to 72, but 52 is the most common, hours a week, and it's great. I have money, freedom, I do what I want. Being a kid sucked. Story 21. People think it's common sense that if you jump into lava, you will sink. This is wrong. You can't sink in lava. Depending on what height you're at, you'll compress into it, but it will snap back and pop you back up. Similar to jumping on a trampoline, but with less bounce. A very hot on-fire trampoline that will unalive you. I never once thought about jumping into lava, but thanks. Good to know. Incorrect. Source: Minecraft. Story 22. Running hot water to pour grease down the sink drain. That water always cools eventually, and usually the same distance down the drain, where it solidifies, creating a blockage. Although it's best to never put grease down the drain, if you run cold water and run the garbage disposal, the grease will solidify when it hits the cold water, the disposal will chop it into tiny pieces, and it will float down the line, creating no blockage. Story 23. A lot of nutrition common sense is based on nothing and/or has never been proven. I chalk it up to the fact that the human body is more adaptable than anyone gives it credit for, and that goes for diet as well as a lot of other things. That, and people think they can find solutions through dietary inclusions or exclusions, or they look toward those things as something to blame health problems on. Story 24. That birds will abandon their chicks if the chicks are handled by humans. No, they won't. Put that baby bird back. Not only will the parent birds continue to care for a baby bird returned to its nest, but it's also possible to trick them into raising baby birds that aren't originally from their nest if you sneak them in there. Story 25. Put ice on a burn. Do not do this. It can rip the skin. Do put the burn under cool water immediately. They now recommend lukewarm water, as cold water can irritate the burn. It's not irritation. Hot skin is still elastic, and shocking it with cold makes it contract and takes on a deformed or more painful shape. Story 26. People get mad when they don't get a tax refund, but getting a refund means you overpaid and loaned that money to the government tax interest free for the year. You don't want to owe hundreds or thousands of dollars at filing, but if you owe less than $100, that's way better than getting a refund. Story 27. Don't go to bed angry. Me and my husband ignoring this rule has saved our marriage. Do you know how many stupid fights are caused by being tired? That's why I prefer the rule, no serious talks before 8 a.m. and after 10 p.m. Arguing when you're tired is not a good idea. Story 28. Do not ever wait 24 hours before filing a missing persons report. If you have a reasonable suspicion that something happened to someone, call immediately. In crime shows, when they say the first 24 hours are crucial in a missing child case, they're not making it up. Story 29. Ignore a bully and they'll leave you alone. No, they'll just see you as a weak target. Smack the hell out of them if they already made it physical. Note, it is morally acceptable to nut punch when they made it physical themselves. Story 30. The slower and more defensive you drive, the better. Couldn't be further from the truth. You need a mix of defensive and offensive to be truly safe. Keep traffic flowing and prevent bottlenecks. Don't be nice. Be predictable. Story 31. If you're in a city that has a big issue with traffic congestion, widening the freeway isn't going to make it better, and it might actually make it worse thanks to induced demand. Story 32. The concept of common sense. There's nothing common about it. Saying common sense to back up your reasoning is no different to saying, because I said so, to your kid. Story 33. Just throw your garbage in the parking lot. The cart people will pick it up. I mean, it's true, but at the same time, curse you, cart people. Story 34. Going outside with wet hair will not make you get sick. It will make you feel cold as hell, though. Source: am Canadian, have showered. Story 35. Sometimes, when someone is having a bad day, it's better just to listen and agree rather than offer logical advice. Story 36. Thomas Paine would like to know your location. Story 37. An economy is not like a household budget. Story 38. All fires can be put out with water.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.